Hi, everyone. This is John Daly. I'm here again with Bernie Goldberg for another episode of the No BS Zone. How's it going, Bernie?
So far, so good, John.
Excellent. So today we'll be talking about a few different items. We'll start with the midterm elections. They're almost here, just a few more weeks. We want to talk about both the House and the Senate, but let's start with the House. Bernie, where do you believe the momentum is at right now for the House, and are you willing to make a prediction at this moment about what we'll see on election night?
Let me answer the second question first. No on predictions. My crystal ball broke in 2016 when I confidently said Donald Trump would not run for president. So I'm not predicting anything, but I'll analyze. How's that? Uh, the the House should go to the Republicans for a number of reasons. One is historically, Republicans the out party wins in the first midterm election. So Republicans have history in their favor. The second issue is that if voters vote on inflation, the border crisis, and crime, those are issues that help Republicans. If they vote on abortion and Donald Trump, those are issues that help Democrats. Right now, as we speak, the issues that favor Republicans are issues that are most important to independent voters. And so that helps Republicans. So Republicans should win the House. Let me make very clear that the average since World War II is the out party wins 26 House seats. If Republicans pick up about 20 to 25, 26 seats, that's not a red wave as far as I'm concerned. It sure isn't a tsunami as people, including me, were predicting at the beginning of summer. 25, 26 seats is average. And the reason it isn't more is because of Donald Trump, I believe. But I'll get to that in a second after we talk about the Senate. The three most likely scenarios, according to Karl Rove in the Senate, are a 50-50 split, 51-49 for Republicans, 51-49 for Democrats. So it's a toss-up. Now, historically, since World War II, the out party wins 4 seats in the Senate. Republicans are not going to win 4 seats in the Senate. And that's because they have, thanks again to Donald Trump, they have picked some very bad candidates. The worst of which by a country mile is Herschel Walker. If they had picked anybody else, including you or me, John,
I don't
we'd
know.
be, well,
We would have never won the primary.
well, Herschel Walker is the nominee because Donald Trump endorsed him and pushed him. Donald Trump has a knack for picking people who do very well in primaries, not so much in general elections, I think. But let's see. Let's wait and see.
No, you bring up a good point about Herschel Walker. Things were looking a little dicey for a while, and again, it's because of these of the certain candidates. Oz, Blake Masters, Herschel Walker. You mentioned some of those. Um, yeah, things have gotten quite a bit worse for Walker lately with his, these revelations coming out about paying for abortion and his son coming out and saying some things. On the other side, what could actually help the Republicans take back the majority is Dr. Oz's Democratic opponent, John Fetterman. He had a huge margin. He was way ahead of Oz at the beginning, and he suffered a stroke. I think it was back in May, and it's really drawn a lot of questions. He doesn't look like he's all there, which one wouldn't expect him to be, having had a stroke. But yeah, his they sort of have the Democrats have sort of a similar issue on their end with Fetterman as the Republicans do with Walker.
I'm very glad you brought that up. Very glad. Let's take those two candidates, Fetterman and Walker. Fetterman had a stroke, as you say, and I think we wish him well. We hope he recovers totally. But he's not a good candidate. Sometimes, as you said, he's not all there. He can't get it. He can't finish a sentence. Okay. Herschel Walker is a terrible candidate for all the reasons we all know. But Democrats aren't going to badmouth Fetterman, and Republicans aren't going to badmouth Herschel Walker. because we're not looking for heroes anymore. We're looking for people who will vote the way we want them to vote and take control of the Senate. So you're going to hear silence on Fetterman's incapacity, and you're going to hear silence on Herschel Walker's horrible candidacy. One note, and I'm not looking to make enemies among my evangelical friends because they believe in a lot of things that are good, but evangelical Christians are notably silent on Herschel Walker's story. Let's put it that way. You know why they shouldn't be silent? Because Herschel Walker is credibly accused of a lot of things evangelical Christians would be against. But they're silent because they want him to win. I understand that. I want to make that very clear. I understand that. But if this is why people are soured on politics. If you're an evangelical Christian Republican or any Republican, you can't badmouth Herschel Walker. And if you're a Democrat, you can't badmouth John Fetterman. They're both terrible candidates.
Yeah, would you say that things have, and I know the big answer is, yes over time, but you think about when Roy Moore was running for Senate just a few years ago. I mean, this was during the Trump era. This wasn't that long ago. But some things came out about him and underage girls, some tendencies he had in the past, some different things. And in Alabama, Republicans rejected him. The Democrat ended up winning. Do we live in a very different time from then as far as how evangelicals are looking at these races?
That may have been a little different because just the idea that a grown man was going out with either teenage girls or maybe even underage girls, I don't know. That was just a bridge too far for Alabamians. Well, how do you say it?
I'm not sure.
Herschel Walker's story should offend Republicans. I don't think they should vote Democratic because of it, because I'll tell you why. Warnock, the Democratic incumbent senator, he has his stuff too. The best I can figure, if you ask him what his position is on abortion, I don't think he has any restrictions on it at all. I think he's pro-abortion, period. Pro-abortion rights, period. So in that sense, he's no saint either. But you're not going to get, and this is the key point which I've made already, you're not going to get Republicans to badmouth any candidate, and you're not going to get Democrats to badmouth any candidate because we want to win. That's what it's about. Totally understandable. I'm not putting it down. I'm just telling you, we're not looking for great statesmen anymore. We're looking for somebody who's going to control the Senate. And if Herschel Walker can do it, we're voting for Herschel Walker. If John Fetterman can do it, we'll vote for John Fetterman. Even though John Fetterman can't talk and Herschel Walker has trouble thinking, we're not, that's beside the point. It's too late for that. They're both our candidates, and that's that. And we could thank, again, we could thank my close personal friend, Donald Trump, for all of this. Because in addition to Herschel Walker, there's the candidate in Arizona. There are candidates in New Hampshire that would have been better than this guy who was against everything, and then he changed his mind in a New Hampshire second to try to win a general election. Donald Trump has caused more damage to the Republican Party than anybody, probably ever. And yet his most loyal fans, some of whom are listening right now, they don't care. That's their right, but they don't care. And they'll even say, well, he's not perfect. And I wish he didn't say that, but he's better than the Democrats. I get it. I get the holding your nose and voting for somebody you don't like. I get that. What I don't get is embracing somebody who has done so much damage to the party you, the audience, believes in, which is mostly the Republican Party.
Yeah, I'm especially, and I won't say I'm surprised by this, but so much of the argument for Trump all along has been that he's a winner, and he won in 2016 against a very terrible candidate, but he has cost the Republicans a crazy number of seats. He did that in 4 years, And it seems to me that if the GOP had just nominated some fairly normal people, instead of these candidates for Senate that are currently keeping it very tight, I think they'd be in a very good position right now. You know, the Dems are getting killed on issues like you said, inflation, crime, the border. Um, those are obviously bad things for this country, but very good things if you're the party that's out of power, going into an election. And it's you mentioned Trump I think is a liability for the Republican Party. The abortion issue maybe as well. But right now, and I agree with what you said, I don't think those are going to be enough. With inflation is the big one. It's not getting better the way people are expecting, and that's hard to get around if you're a Democrat.
Well, let me just say this before we move on. If Donald Trump had either taken a vacation to Timbuktu or had just played golf and stayed out of this, there would be a red wave, I believe. There would be. And this average of 4 Senate seats going to the out of power party, I think Republicans would pick up 4 seats because several candidates who didn't run because they didn't need the garbage that would go with running and because they didn't support the idea that the election was stolen and Donald Trump would be all over them. So they said, I don't need it, I'm not running. They would have run and they probably would have won. So you would have had better candidates and you would have had a bigger Republican pickup, I think, in the Senate than you're going to see. And there may not be any Republican pickup in the Senate. They may lose a seat. They may. You want to like Donald Trump? Be my guest. Be my guest. I understand, as I say, the holding your nose thing. But please understand how much damage he's done to the Republican Party. It was his big mouth that lost the House in 2018. Then he lost the presidency because people had enough of his chaos. And then a few months later, in January of the next year, he lost the Senate. In Georgia, two progressive Democrats win in Georgia. That
Yeah.
isn't easy. So he's done tremendous damage. When you say, John, that he's seen as a winner only among his most loyal, diehard fans who are blind to his reality. He's done more damage than any Republican in history to the Republican Party.
And people, just a real quick note there at the end, and I think most of the people watching this probably already know that. But if the Senate ends up back at a 50-50, it does stay with the Democrats. They stay with the majority because of Kamala Harris. So yeah, they gotta to get that majority. It's gonna be tight. It might still happen, based on everything. But yeah, it's gonna be tight. So if we want, let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. It's something that has nothing to do with the midterms. So Chris Cuomo, formerly of CNN, made his big return to cable news recently. He's now on News Nation, and his return was actually, I said big, but it really wasn't big at all. It flopped big time. He came in dead last. Now we're going to talk about some bigger picture stuff on cable news in just a minute. But first, what are your thoughts on Chris Cuomo? Were you surprised that News Nation even had interest in him?
I'm assuming their ratings in that time slot weren't good. And they figured, well, everybody knows the name Chris Cuomo. He'll do better. Well, no, he's doing terribly. He's doing terribly. I don't find his ratings nearly as interesting as I find Tucker Carlson's ratings. Tucker Carlson is at the top of the food chain. Chris Cuomo is at the bottom in his time slot. As actually, Chris Cuomo is on the bottom, I think, in probably all of primetime cable news. But Tucker Carlson has about 3 million viewers, which makes him the top rated cable news host in America. 3 million viewers. There are over 300 million people in the United States, about 330 million. That means, John, that at any given time, people watching Tucker Carlson, 99 point something are not watching Tucker Carlson. Literally, over 99% of Americans are doing something else other than watching Tucker Carlson. And yet, cable news has this outsized influence on the conversation. Why do we care what's going on cable news when 99 more than 99% of Americans aren't even watching it. And I think, and I'd like to know what you think, John, I think the people who are watching it, I'm not putting anybody down who's watching it. I want to make that very clear. But they're at the fringe of the political conversation. They must be, because otherwise there'd be more than 3 million people watching. And at 3 million in a nation of 330 million, that comes out to 99 point something watching Dancing with the Stars or something or other, or doing something else. I don't understand why cable news is seen, and I've been guilty of this too, seeing it as something more important than it really is. I think we should ignore primetime cable news. Good luck with that.
Well, no, I totally agree with what you said at the end. I'm going to, yeah, I do have some thoughts on this. I've written a little bit about it, but I'm going to cover a few different things because I think I do have sort of maybe a little bit different take. So I've suspected for some time that cable news ratings probably underrepresent the actual number of people watching, and I think that for a few different reasons. Some related all to, most related to different ways that people can watch these shows now. It's not. I think the recording, the ratings recording's not as sharp as we probably think it is. But also, I realize, this is purely anecdotal on my part, but the sheer volume of people that I personally run into in the real world, not on the internet, from all different walks of life and from different parts of the country, who I somehow end up discovering are very much into these shows and have their favorite cable news shows. Sometimes people come, if I'm doing a book signing somewhere, I have a little poster that has blurbs of somewhat notable people, yourself included, that have done a blurb for my book, and I am amazed by the number of people who come up and say, "Oh, Dana Perino, I watch her every day." It's just, throwing out in this random sampling of America and just how many people are familiar with these personalities. And I think that's so I do think it's probably more than we realize. I still think it's a relatively small and quite small audience, when you look at it from the big picture. But I also think there is a trickle down effect where for example, Fox News, I think, kind of sets the tones and narratives for much of the online right, many of the radio shows that are out there. We're talking about millions more, but it is still so pretty small. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, that's a good point. I'll concede is the wrong word because I have no problem agreeing with you on that. So yes, it's more than 3 million. Let's say it's 10 million. Do the math. 10 million in a country of over 300 million, it's still a relatively, and it isn't 10 million, by the way. But I understand what you're saying. The trickle down effect, people on talk radio pick it up, people on the internet pick it up and all that. My problem with it is, and I'll be blunt, I think cable news has done more to divide cable news channels, all three major ones, have done more to polarize Americans than almost anything else. On Fox, nobody tunes into Fox to hear that Joe Biden has done something right. Nobody tunes into CNN or MSNBC to hear that Donald Trump has done something right. So all they do, and I switch around to all three only so that I could talk to people listening to us now and have some credibility. I switch around. I don't stay on anything. If you tune in to Fox, you're going to get a number of stories about crime, the border, and inflation. If you tune into CNN, you're going to get stories about January 6th and Trump. Same with MSNBC. All these stories that Fox is doing are legitimate. Stories that CNN are doing, they're legitimate. But on Fox, you get one view of America, and on CNN, you get another view of America. I worked at CBS News for 28 years. What I'm describing about cable is totally different. I mean, cable, the opinion shows, and by the way, the opinion shows aren't just at night. They're in the morning, and they're sprinkled throughout the day as a hybrid of news and commentary. So you're getting opinions all day long. And on Fox, you're getting one view of America. On CNN and MSNBC, you're getting another view of America. And that's not what news is. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm old school and I make no apologies for it. That's not what news is. And Chris Licht at CNN is supposedly trying to get the liberal bias out of CNN. If he succeeds, and I don't think he will, I think liberalism is in the DNA of CNN these days. But if he succeeds, the ratings will suffer because people don't tune in, as I said before, they don't tune into cable news to get down the middle opinions, on this side and on that side. They go there to get their own values and views and biases validated. So CNN won't succeed no matter what they do, I believe. And the rest of it, if you want to know that Biden's a jerk, tune into Fox. Tune in the morning, you'll get plenty of that. I don't watch any at night. I can't stand it at night. See, you want to find out that Trump is a menace, and he's a continuing menace, and he should be literally locked up. Then you watch the others. They're both legitimate stories, but they're both one-sided stories.
I think something else that's really important to recognize too when we talk about the influence of cable news, and this, potentially is an even bigger issue than some of the things we've talked about here. There is some disproportionate influence for sure that cable news has on high-ranking elected leaders in this country. Far too many politicians live and die by what they see on cable news, and they love going on these shows and feeling like celebrities and saying over-the-top stuff, scary stuff to get viewers to donate to their campaigns and get viewers to pay attention to them. And it really is its own little subculture. It's not, I don't believe it's representative of America or perhaps even these people's constituencies, but it's the audience that they're focused on and catering to nonetheless.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you have ambitions to run for president and you're a Republican, you're going on Fox. And if you're a liberal Democrat, you'll wind up on CNN. And the best I can figure, you're not going to get too many tough questions on Fox of Republicans, and you're not going to get too many tough questions. This is a generalization. Sometimes there are tough questions, but generally speaking, the reason liberals go on CNN is because they'll get an easier ride than if they went on Fox. And the reason conservatives go on Fox is they'll get an easier ride than if they went on CNN. I am just of the school that says I may be a conservative, but if I'm interviewing a conservative, I'm going to ask them tough questions. And if you're a liberal and you're interviewing a liberal politician, you have the same obligation. On opinion shows, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that. Look, I have somebody, I'm not going to mention any names, but I read a certain column every week of a very well-known person. John just pointed to himself. Of a very well-known person whose name is one of the most well-known names in media in America. He writes about Joe Biden, and I agree with much of what he says. He writes about the culture in America and what's wrong with it, and I agree with much of what he says. You know what he never writes about? Donald Trump. Isn't that interesting? It's not that I disagree with him about Donald Trump. I don't know, he doesn't write about Donald Trump. That's part of the bias. Even opinion journalists, and I'm talking about an opinion journalist, even an opinion journalist can't criticize Joe Biden for being a liar and not criticize Donald Trump for the same thing. And I find it fascinating when I occasionally tune into Fox and I hear somebody say, well, Joe Biden told another lie today. They're right, but they never say, Donald Trump told a lie today. That's why I stopped watching for the most part. I just can't handle that kind of non-journalistic hypocrisy.
Oh, absolutely. And what's funny is there's so many former, Trump officials that are invited on to Fox News. Some work there now. And it's funny, especially listening to them carry on and on about Joe Biden's dishonesty, and you're thinking, what what planet am I in where are we on that that you in particular feel comfortable having an argument about honesty only directed, at
I'll,
Joe Biden? But that's where
I'll
we're
tell,
at.
I'll tell you what planet you're on, planet amnesia.
Yeah,
It-
it's funny because you mentioned the point too about this person you read who never talks about Trump. I think some of our viewers, some people watching this, some of our readers were kind of thinking to themselves, "Wow, I wish Bernie and John were like that," because I really
well,
would rather just hear about Biden.
that's a very good point. That's a very good point. We have some loyal followers to who I am immensely grateful, because I think our audience is smarter than most on the internet, on blogs and on websites. I think, and I'm not blowing smoke. I really do, based on the feedback that we get. But there are some people who have dropped out of being part of our audience, and they tell you why. Bernie is anti-Trump. Well, I'm anti-Biden too. I'm anti-Trump, and I've defended Trump against irresponsible charges. I wrote a whole column recently that I said the good news is liberals aren't calling Donald Trump Hitler anymore. The bad news is now they're calling him Vladimir Putin. I've defended Trump against irresponsible charges against him. That's not good enough to some people. You have to defend Trump on every count. And if we had more liberals watching, they criticize me for supporting Donald Trump on occasion. That's not who I am. I've said this before. This is part of, if we had an official mission statement, it would be, I'm only giving you my honest opinion, some of which turn out to be wrong, believe it or not, because I know you won't believe this. I'm only human, but I will never, ever pander to you in order to get you to watch me or listen to me or read what I write. I will have more respect for you than to blow smoke and kiss your rear end because I think that's what you want to hear. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And if some of you, maybe some of you watching now, say, you know what? I want somebody who agrees with me. Okay, free country. Do what you have to do.
Right, and
But
it's something
for the
something.
rest of you, tell your friends, come on. We want more people watching and listening and reading. Come on, tell your friends. You're not doing that. You know, we need you to help out here.
Absolutely, the more the merrier. And I will say, one point, and I actually, and I wrote about this recently. I am actually sympathetic to. I think there are people out there who, voted for Trump. They're not as hardcore as some of his others, and they're really just sick of hearing about the guy. And I get it. I sympathize too. It's like there's a big part of me that wishes he would have done when he left the presidency what George W. Bush did, just kind of faded away, gracefully left politely, left the way a president should, helped with the peaceful transition of power, largely stayed out of politics. But the reality of the fact is that he hasn't. He's still very much the leader of the party. A lot of what Republican candidates do, they do because of him. He's getting anybody who was critical of him throughout his term, he's helping to get them out of office. I mean, so he is a big news story. It's not because you and I write about it. It's because of where he's at right now in today's politics and with the Republican Party.
I'm tired, and they're right. They want to hear about other things. I'm tired of writing about him. But if he's a big influence on the midterm elections, which I think he is, then it's difficult to ignore him. I've got a column coming out on Monday, next Monday. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It's about how we're living in a world that I don't know if I'm hallucinating or if I'm witnessing reality. The Democrats and liberals and the woke crowd are telling us things that are insane. I'll just give you one example. There are more than two genders, more than boys and girls, men and women, male and female, and men can get pregnant. I mean, I have an exact quote that says a man can get pregnant. Really? I'm either hallucinating or they're the ones who are hallucinating. And that has nothing to do with Donald Trump. And if you're a conservative, you'll probably like the column. If you're a liberal, you should like the column too, because it just makes sense, in my humble opinion. But I'm right. Donald Trump has nothing to do with this column. And I like that. I'm getting tired of him. I got tired of him a long time ago. And he's been very gracious to me over the years. If I want to, when I wanted to interview him, he made himself available. He offered me a ride home on his plane from when I did a story with him in Scotland. I couldn't accept it, and I didn't. But I'm troubled by the fact, being a conservative, I'm troubled by the fact of how much harm he's done to the conservative and Republican Party cause. That's my gripe with Donald Trump. That's my gripe with him. That's it. That's the extent of it. I wish him well in his life. I guess I'm a never Trumper, but not in the way some people are. If he somehow magically became a more decent human being, I'd embrace him. That's never going to happen, of course, because he's incapable of it. But I don't want to be obsessed with Donald Trump. I don't want to be I don't want to be like people on MSNBC. Trump is living in their heads rent free, as the saying goes. I'd like to write about other things, but he's an influence in our culture and our politics, and it's tough to ignore.
No, it is. It is. You're right. I mean, it's if you're omitting him, you're omitting a lot, of our current political scene. Well, that's probably a good place to go ahead and wrap things up. I want to thank everybody for joining us today on the No BS Zone. Please let us know what you think in our comments. What we're on Substack, our website. We had a little overhaul. I know some of you have noticed for sure. Whether it's Substack or Patreon, leave your questions for us. Anything else you'd like to say, Bernie?
Just what I said a few minutes ago. Tell your friends. Please tell your friends. As John said, the more the merrier. That's your class assignment for this week. Get at least one of your friends to join us, because the more people we talk to, the more influence we have, the more influence the viewer has also, because what you say influences what I say. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I take it into account. So tell your friends.
And one more thing, if you are a Substack member now, you can actually gift a membership to somebody else. I saw someone do that the other day on our site, gifted a monthly membership to a friend of theirs. And you can absolutely do that too. If you think someone would like it, why not surprise them with the gift of a membership? So yeah, we'd love to have you all.
Thank you, John.
Absolutely. You have a good day, Bernie.
You too.